I'm a time saver. I am a magician. I'm a tester. I'm a database administrator. I'm a marketing person. I'm a salesperson.
Vishesh, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
I'm honored to be here, Young. I appreciate you thinking about me, so it's really cool of you. My name is Vishesh Shankar. I'm a business intelligence engineer at Amazon. I am rounding up my first year here. I've been in the BI space this will be my 9th year, actually this September. So I've been in the BI space for, I think before it was called BI and before it was really about analysts and data engineering. And so BI, I've been there during the inception of BI.
Like, what are the roots of someone getting into this field? Like, is there a specific major in the university or college, or do you just one day say like, hey, like I'm going to be a BI?
So this is one of my favorite questions to answer for folks when they ask me this, like, hey, how'd you get started? What's your traditional route? Let's just bucket it as my route was not traditional at all. I actually was an entry-level job at Nordstrom. I was walking around the hall one day, and my manager, soon-to-be manager, walked up to me and was like, hey, do you have a moment to talk? And I'm like, I'm using the bathroom. What's going on? He's like, I need to talk to you. So we sat down for an hour right there. I vividly remember the conversation. He goes, hey, do you know anything about SQL? I'm like, what's that? Do you know anything about Excel? They're like, barely. What do you know about Tableau? Nothing, because the Tableau was brand new at that time. And he's like, look, I heard you do good work. If you come work with me, we'll teach you skills to learn SQL. We'll teach you skills to learn VBA, which is an object-oriented programming language for Excel, for Microsoft Office. And he's like, we'll teach you these skills in about 3 to 4 years, you'll be making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. And I was like, I get paid more money to do the same job, 8 to 5. Great, sign me up. So that was the beginning of my journey. And I just worked my way up through there. I think it's important to preface that with, I have a degree in mathematics and economics. So I definitely have a leg up in folks in terms of just like math and business acumen knowledge. But I don't think that is a prerequisite for this field. I have one of my favorite mentors I've had. He has a degree in psychology. He's actually here at Amazon as well. So there is no set path. What I think is important for folks, and I always tell this to people, I don't care if you're going to BI, if you're going into vendor management, if you could be going into being a doctor. I think it's always important for folks to understand a little bit about code, whether that's SQL, which is a declarative programming language to help describe the data that you want to return, or you look at Python or C, or there's so many declarative programming language where you're explicitly telling the computer what you want the computer to do. Knowing a baseline of that is going to be honestly an entry point into business intelligence, because business intelligence is it's a field where we kind of hit on a multitude of subjects. We're hitting on data and analytics, so we need to understand the data. We're hitting on data engineering, understanding how the data needs to be shaped and sculpted. Data science, sometimes I'm doing predictive stuff. I'm trying to predict what my customer is going to be looking for or looking after. And then there's also the business intelligence. It's kind of melding that together, speaking the business side, speaking the tech side, getting the two to work in cahoots, and then oftentimes translating one or the other to the other side is the challenge there. So that entry point is going to be very broad, but once you get into it, I think things that people should be looking out for are like, oh, I think I would be interested in business intelligence if you have attention to detail, if you like to find patterns, if you like analyzing data and deriving insights from those are more of the skills you want to have. They're going to be applicable to other realms as well. You can be a program manager, but definitely if you like getting into the nitty gritty of the data, understanding how a shirt sold on one day and how that is in relationship to how the shirt category is selling for the entire year, and those type of relationships, definitely going to be a good starting point for you there. But again, I preface that I'm not the typical come from school and make your way into BI. But I think that's important to highlight. There is no one path sets all for BI. Definitely like build your own path, understand where you have your niches and what you're interested in. But if you're interested in data, and you're interested in the business, BI is definitely that perfect realm. I interact with both technology and I interact both with the business, and it's a good amount of both. And I have to be able to speak in both languages very adeptly and very fluently.
Gotcha. I think you kind of mentioned it while you were answering this question, but I also want to learn a little bit more on so what's the difference between someone who's in BI, like business intelligence, and like someone who's in data science?
Yes. So actually, I spent a lot of time researching this last year because I was trying to get a business intelligence engineer title. I thought it's very important. And in that understanding, I came to the best way that I can answer that, to me, if we look at a spectrum, there's data analysts, there's business intelligence engineers, and there's data engineers and data scientists. Those are kind of the realms you're going to be looking at, and they kind of sit on a spectrum. And really, business intelligence sit underneath all three of those. And let me explain the three above. So data analysts are people that are telling you why something happened. They will look at the data, they'll look at the reports, they'll look at the facts and say, hey, because this product sold, this product didn't. Or, hey, we had an impact in shipping availability, so this product didn't sell. They're telling you why something happened. They're reviewing past facts.
Gotcha.
Data scientists are trying to predict the future. They're trying to say, based on the models we set up, based on what we've understand about our customers, we're going to put it through this algorithm, and this algorithm is going to say this item is going to be sold, what's going to be sold at this point in time. A data engineer is sitting and saying, what is the fact? What sold at what time, at what point in time, et cetera, et cetera. They're making that more accessible. Business intelligence engineers sit across kind of all three realms there. I have to play a little bit of each one of those hats. Now, personally, I like the data engineering part the best because it allows me to really impact what predictive stuff we can do and what questions we can answer. And that's where I feel like I bring the most value, at least in my role. But BIEs are a very broad category. Here at Amazon, they were just reclassified as a technology family. And there's a lot of different entryways and a lot of different expectations with entering into the BI space. What are your roles? So what I've noticed here at Amazon, there's really three different types of BIs. There's going to be, again, on a spectrum. There's going to be BIs like myself. I'm on a BI tech team. So I have a BI manager. So he is a former BIE. I sit on a team with 6 other BIEs, and we do decentralized reporting needs for our organization, the Hardlines organization. And so we sit in a group, and we're handling very specialized reports that are going to go out to the masses. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have someone who is a BIE who's sitting on a retail team. So they might be the lone BIE working on with a retail team, and their functions might be more focused towards the data analysis side of it. So they're going to be getting some data inputs and helping the business understand what should be the next step. And that's where, but they still have to do some of the same category of stuff that I mentioned before. And in between that is going to be a BI on a tech-focused team, but there's only BI on their team. So that's your manager has some understanding of technologies, but they're not focused so much on retail. You're maybe doing BI in terms of how a program's working, and that's where the line gets muddy because you're not working so much in business intelligence and more maybe data intelligence, but the term still holds true. So again, there's a BI is handling multiple roles, and it really depends on what team you end up falling in, which end of the spectrum you're going to be leaning on and doing more of those activities.
Gotcha. So I'll just ask you about your process of getting into Amazon. So I would assume that interview process for different roles, for example, for me, marketing manager, and for you, BI engineer, would be very different. Can you explain a little bit? Did you have any technical assessments, for example, while you were interviewing?
Yeah, I would have no doubt in mind that if our interviews are anywhere near alike, someone's not doing their job right. But yeah, so that's a great question. I've actually also recently got more involved with interviewing, so I can talk about my experience and then more how things are shifting as well. So for my interview, I had a 5-part interview loop. 3 of those were non-technical and 2 of those were technical. I think that's, again, one of the unique parts about BI. There's a good blend of we need technical acumen, we need business acumen. So there's going to be a lot of sussing out from those conversations, and especially before what business impact have you had, what technologies have you operated with. So that's definitely the difference there. I don't remember the particulars about my individual segments of interview, but I can tell you, just because I had non-technical interviews with 3 of those folks, 2 of those folks were still asking how my technical job impacted my ability to do non-technical stuff. So there's kind of that blend there. So that's definitely something to be aware about as a BI. We're going to be interested in how, not only how you interacted with technologies and the reports and the data you created, but how do you interact with your customers? How do you work with your customers or work against shifting deadlines? As many of us know in retail, the things change daily. So how do you operate in that space? I feel like, I don't know personally, but I feel like at least in a tech space, there's at least a bit more rigor to it, and there's a bit more of a timeline. In BI, I could have a product launch today, I can have a product launch tomorrow. There's no cadence, there's no set cadence. So it's a bit more flexible to what retail needs. And so how do you navigate in that space? Those are some of the questions we're going to be really looking for in order to make sure that you're going to be able to adapt to this fast-moving environment that we have here. One thing that I would definitely say more that I'm seeing in the interviews I'm now actively coordinating is we're doing more of a technical assessment and a bit more of a rigorous technical assessment that also leads way to the BI job family moving into technology. I can only assume that job that assessment will only continue to evolve and get more robust as we fully integrate into the tech job family.
Yeah, shifting gears a little bit. Tell me what you do as a BI engineer.
I'd say in a normal day-to-day, there's a couple of things, at least on my team. The two things that happen weekly is I host an on-call, so I will man a desk. So we're in virtual Corona time, so it's virtual. But when we were in the office, I'd man a desk for 4 hours. Any one of my retail teams and my partner organizations like yours, Young, have the opportunity to come to sit with us for. We have a 4-hour window where people can come ask us questions, SQL-based questions, requirements-based questions. And so that's 4 hours of the week. We have another 2 sessions, each an hour, where the entire team shows up, and we also assist with any questions across the entire organization. So that's 6 hours of the week out of the 48 hours. There's another probably, I'd say 4 hours that are just in meetings and touch bases and updating status. So let's talk about the other 30. And those other 30, you're looking at a combination of things depending on where I am in the development cycle. So if I'm starting a new project, maybe I'm going to be spending more time writing raw SQL, validating data points, making sure I'm building the right metric definitions. As I get further along in the process, maybe I've built the ETL, extract, transform, load jobs, and now I'm ready to build a dashboard. I might spend more time working on as simple stuff as building a simple dashboard, formatting, making sure the experience works correctly. There's time building documentation. So a lot of the ETL that I work on is complicated. It's not something that you can just read 1 or 2 lines. It's 1,000 lines long. So documentation, highlighting pitfalls, assumptions, data metric definitions that are readable for a business user as well as tech user. So there's that kind of like creating that doc. Again, we talk on this a lot. How do I bridge that gap? So I'm creating documentation that's usable for both tech and business users. I am a level 5 on my team, and so as a level 5, I'm involved in doing the code review process. So members of my team below and above me will submit code, and I then become latched on to one of those projects, and I do a review on that code, make sure the SQL's right, call out logic issues, et cetera, et cetera. Like I mentioned to you, as a BI, we wear a lot of hats. So it just kind of depends on where we are. But again, we're going to be one of those 3. Am I doing some type of analysis? Am I building some type of environment to host the data? Or I'm helping build some type of future state? So a lot of that data science-y, because we don't do data science yet. We're not building models yet on my team, but we will do things to predict. So the customer will say, hey, I'm going to take this report and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z things. And so I try to predict those things. Oh, you're going to take this report. What are the next 6 steps you're going to do? How many of those can we cut off your plate and put this as a BI process rather than a manual process? That's where, when I like to put a pause, like that's what I officially do. What do I like to say unofficially? I'm a time saver. So I'm often gone to find ways, how do I get data better? How do I save time? How do I cut process? I am a magician, so I'll make things appear where they shouldn't, or make things, accessible in places they haven't been before. I'm a tester, so I'll be testing products. I'll be testing our internal products. I'll be testing our flow. I'm a database administrator. Not so much at Amazon. That role has been a bit split out, but it could become back something that was on my previous team. I was database administrator for sure, so I don't want to. That could be something you are responsible for here at Amazon. Just depends on your team dynamics. I'm a marketing person. I'm a salesperson. I have to sell my product. If I create this awesome dashboard, I got to make sure people know. I got to work with the right people. I gotta evangelize it. I gotta get it out there. So sometimes it could be a big launch that's going globally or enterprise wide, and it's easy because I have a team of people behind me helping me. Or sometimes it's just me and I have launched it, so I have to then figure out the best way to get it out there. So there's a lot of hats that we wear, but again, the key things are developing data sets, developing dashboards that then our end users will be using. That's like my top level, but once you start to break down the cookie and get the crumbs, that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
What would a BI's career trajectory look like?
I think the first thing always is going to be, I think the business intelligence engineer role is a great way to understand what is my next step, right? You dabble in so many small technological pieces and technology pieces as well as business pieces. If you do join as a BIE, you do kind of open your realm, you open your world. Like you could go down the product manager role, you can go down a project manager role, you can go down BI and advance in BI, you can go down towards data science, you can go towards data engineering. There are a lot of avenues, and so I don't want to say this is. When I started, my initial intent was to eventually become a data engineer. I joined and I was like, I actually like being a BIE. I might want to stay as a BIE. So you have that flexibility. I feel like you're not pigeonholed as much because you can go to your manager and say, hey, I came to you and told you I'm really interested in DE stuff, but I'm now really liking this data science stuff, and you can figure out with your manager how to get projects and things that can push you in that direction. So I don't think there's a typical, that's the beauty of BI. It's very open-ended, but I think if the general consensus, if I were to, brew it all down, is you'd be a BI and eventually you'd move into data science, because they tend to bleed in doing the same things. And the most successful data scientists that I've worked with have had a baseline knowledge of what BIs do, and it allowed them to get their data better and help build their models. But I only know one. I've only known one. I've known of maybe a handful of data scientists. So I can't speak to the data scientist community as a whole. I just know the one BI data scientist I worked with. He was able to get to the data he needed better. He was able to build his models faster, and he just had better experience. So that's where I originally was thinking about going down that way. But I love being a BI. That's definitely a role I will continue to work towards.
What surprised you the most after joining Amazon?
The most interesting thing that came to me when I joined Amazon is the process of doing some BI related activities, doing extract, transform, load. That's a common activity for any BI. A lot of that has been abstracted. And so what I mean by that is it's taken out a lot of the heavy lifting I used to do in my old job. So one of the biggest things I had to do all the time was data quality checks. Does the data properly come from the source systems and land in my local repositories? And is my data quality good? A lot of that stuff has been abstracted, and there's a web UI that Amazon has set up that handles most of that. I can offload that thought process and mind power to that system. And so now, instead of me being on call as early as 6 o'clock in the morning and wondering if data quality is, if things ran correctly and all these steps, that's no longer. So I can spend more time. This is what I tell my other BIs on my team. I'm spending more time doing my job where it's most. I get to use my brain, and I get to focus on using my brain power instead of using my brain effort towards making sure things that should be in place, which is data quality and stuff like that, is actually accurate. So it's just a way. That was the best and most surprising thing, is I'm able to spend more time doing my job, things that have value and adding value, than spending time just doing maintenance activities.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Was there any learning curve once you joined? As I assume that we would probably have other systems or tools that other companies that does not use.
Yeah, I mean that my previous point bleeds directly into that. There are certain things that if you know SQL, when you come here, you'll be like, oh, that's SQL. Great. I can look at that and see. There is definitely a learning curve, learning some of our internal systems, especially that web UI that I just called out. I think the other big thing is there's just so much data. I came from Nordstrom before, and I remember talking about how much data I played with, and I'm sure my interviewers were just laughing like, that's like a week for us, buddy. Just the volume is overwhelming. And so that's definitely, and then not only is the volume overwhelming, but what's different also is how many people are creating data. And so like the combination of the two kind of creates an information overload. Like, where do I go to get the right data? Where, you figure that out as you spend more time here. I've been here for about 11 months. So, and I feel like I have a good understanding of what that process looks like now. I think it took me about 3 months to really feel at home with that. Yes, there's a learning curve to that. The other thing I want to hit on is I also joined a BI tech team. So I was surrounded by 6, 7 other people, and my manager especially, who have been around the block. They know where a lot of those important tables, important data sources. So that also, I think, speaks to more why it took me 3 months to get ramped up versus I think a traditional 6 months in a BI space. So that being said, that definitely is like, whoa. Gotcha. But once you get a handle on it, it's definitely, it goes back to being SQL, and you're doing your job. So
what do you like most, and what do you like least about your role?
I really like and for those of us at Amazon might think this cliche, I really like the level of ownership that I'm given, and my ability to take ownership of certain projects. I think I mentioned to you earlier in this conversation, I've been working on redoing this entire dashboard that I was given. No one told me to do that. No one, they just said, bring it over and make it part of our environment. And I was like, I don't think this is something I want to take ownership of, because it's not something that provides the right value and the right information right now. It needs to be. And so I went to my manager, I explained to him the situation. I gave him a list, like, here's where I see there's problems. And he gave me the opportunity to actually make improvements. He saw the value in that. And that just coming to him and saying, I see value in taking true ownership and fixing this was this, that's something new to me. That I can tell you multiple times in my previous role where I'm like, hey, something's on fire over here. Something is wrong. Something is going to provide false positive data, et cetera, et cetera. And only for me, as short as 6 months, as much as I remember one situation, it was 4 years later where someone's like, hey, you guys need to fix this. I'm like, here's my email from 4 years ago where I called this out. And you guys didn't give me time to take ownership over this. So like, it's that type of ownership that is definitely like, it's refreshing. And people, especially my managers, trust me when I come to them with a problem or an issue that we need to take ownership of this, we need to solve it. It's going to get solved, and we massage the work around there. This wasn't a project that my manager wanted to give me the time to do, right? Originally, once I articulated the value, shared it with them, we were able to then make some space and get it along. Things that I don't like, I think the biggest thing, and this isn't going to be here or at previous roles, I think in general, for some reason, people think BI engineers are sitting around waiting for people to message them and say, hey, I have work for you to do. So it's just one of those, like, just because I'm working on your project doesn't mean I have 20 other things I'm managing. And so just because, I haven't messaged you back, or I think that's tends to be, I don't think enough people know what we do. I think that's my answer. People don't know exactly what we do. And so they just see the magic we put out there. And sometimes we do things that they think isn't super complicated. It takes us a day. And they're like, now everything can be done in a day. Versus I do the thing that they think is be super easy. And I come back and be like, hey, this is going to be like 3 weeks. And so it's like understanding where and how long project. And then the other problem and tricky part with my role is you will be given a task or an assignment. People are like, all right, how fast can you get this done? And the thing about business intelligence is it's a perfect blend between the art and science, right? The business side is really art side, and the data is really, and the tech side is really science side of it. And so especially for new BIs, giving that first estimate is like, I don't know, like, I think it's going to take 4 weeks, and then you get done in a week, and now your manager's looking like, hey, is your estimates going to be this off every single time? Or the inverse, hey, it's going to take a week, and now it's taking 6 weeks. And so that estimation is such an art science. That was really hard when I came to Amazon because I didn't know the data. I didn't know the shape and what's going on. And so there's a lot of unknowns in business intelligence as you're starting to explore data. And so that's just a common pitfall. I don't think there's a perfect, hey, how do you fix that, Vishesh? Just more experience working with your partners, whether it's your managers, your business partners, to understand and try to get out as much information from them. So asking a lot of questions is a way to help tackle that problem, but there's never going to be a perfect answer.
Gotcha. My last question. Advice for those who want to join Amazon or enter business intelligence? Yeah.
Let's break this down. For when it comes to business intelligence, again, I'm going to, whether you're been working for 40 years, whether you're first year in high school, I don't care what it is, crack open some introductory coding classes. That's first and foremost. SQL, and pick an object-oriented programming language. The hot one, of course, is Python. You can go Java, you can go do C#, you can do C. Pick one. Just pick SQL and pick one of those programming languages and just mess around with it. What I think we'll come to find is basically everywhere you interact with the web, something more than likely is going to touch a SQL database as they do a report on it, if you start to get to that level of detail. So just understand how technology is around you and you're interacting with it, and how the information you put on a web form might get transformed into data is a really important concept. I don't care where you work, because whether you want to admit it or not, every company is a technology company these days. So understand a little bit about how the technology, the data you're creating, and whatever you're doing, whether it's a school project or a web form you're filling out or your job, might get transported to a relational database somewhere, understanding those relationships. And then part B to that is understanding how code works, understanding how a script might work, so Python or those things, just the basics. That's going to tell you, like, hey, if it interests you, or, that's going to tell you, hey, maybe I want to explore some more BI space. If you open it and you hate the computer and all that stuff, get away from BI. It's not for you. So, and then it's getting into Amazon. I think the biggest thing when it comes to applying for Amazon is, I think it's best for folks. This is the advice I give to all my people that apply is, what you should do, and it took me almost 8 to 10 hours to do this, so it's not like this is easy, but sit down, think about the work that you've done in the last 3 to 6 years. If your experience has been shorter, whatever, then take each one of those projects and really think about, did I own that project? Did I just maintain it? Was I just a tertiary? Did I just have knowledge of it? Kind of break it all out. And then from there, for the ones you owned, you maintained, you updated, whether it's a process, put some facts to it. I did this process in my old job. By doing this process, I saved X amount of time. You want to come with these hard facts, especially when you're applying to BI, because you're around data. You better have these facts. So explain what each one of these projects, these processes do. Have that ready to go. Memorize it. Study it. Whatever it makes it so you have the information, because it makes sure that we know that you understand the impact that you're having when you apply for that job. It's not just like, oh, I made this process better. Okay, what is better to you? Is better 5 minutes? Is it an hour? Is it 10 hours? Talk us through that. The other thing you really want to do is, as many of us know, when you apply at Amazon, we have leadership principles here, and definitely pick those projects that you worked on, especially if you're applying for BI. Understand how those projects related to some of the leadership principles, maybe where you can highlight where you showed a leadership principle in particular. So like this project I just worked on, I'm really showing ownership here, and I'm showing that I didn't accept the previous version and I really want to make it better. So I showed ownership. And I'd almost say tag each one of these projects or these things you've worked on with one or two, leadership principles, just so you have a couple examples ready. You don't have to say it in the interview or whatever, but understand and kind of speak the same language as us, and make sure that we are seeing it the same way you are, and you can kind of put those tags to it. That's for me what I did, and I know going to my interviews, it made me feel more confident that I was able to answer the questions. At least, talk about the questions of the way the interviewers are expecting, and have some ready to go examples in those genres. And know some projects could touch on different genres, so you don't want to end up talking about the same project for every single interviewer. You have different ones, and you're able to really adapt to each interview question.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about, breaking those work you've done into what I owned, what I improved, and what I maintained. Like, I think I've never heard about that, but I think that really, really helps, because at the end of the day, interviewer mostly asks you about I got asked multiple times, so what did you do? What did you do and what was the business impact of it? And given that you are, interviewing with as a VI, that will be much, much more important, because you probably have to, provide the data as well. But awesome.
Yeah.
Great answers. And thank you so much, for your time today.
Yeah.
The audience will be greatly appreciated about your information.